speaking for the first time since those pagers and walkie-talkies caused mass injuries and some deaths among his membership. In that speech, as you said, he announced that he believes Israel has crossed all red lines, and he is vowing retaliation. Jose.
General, what do you think Israel is doing here?
Decide they've got to go to war to return civilian population to the northern part of Israel on the border with Lebanon. Right now, they're moving up their famous 98th Division Commando Forces, airborne units. They're preparing for, if not a ground invasion, buttressing their artillery and airstrikes, which are ongoing and significant. I think the biggest deal, though, Jose, was probably 3,000 plus wounded and as many as 37 killed already in these devastating detonations of pagers and walkie-talkies all throughout the Hezbollah leadership. I'm sort of sorry the Israelis did it now. It's provocative. It's humiliating to Hezbollah. I don't see how they can not respond. And the Israelis would have been better served, one would assume, to save that as a surprise blow in the event of total ground war. But I think
I'm just wondering, General, sorry about that, sir. I'm just wondering, is it because maybe they felt that this was a time they needed to do it because some circumstance arose that maybe was going to, cause this whole operation to be found?
Well, Mark may have some better informed judgments. There's a lot of speculation, certainly on the internet, that they were fearful Hezbollah would figure out that these telephones and walkie-talkies and other apparently electronic devices have been booby-trapped. But it was some kind of a tactical blow to Hezbollah, there's no question, and leaves them reeling in their leadership and their entire command and control system now. They're going to have to reestablish with either runners or landline telephones. It was quite the act by the Israelis. But I think also, Jose, the Israeli people feel this looming threat from the north. 100,000 fighters, 150,000 potential rockets. And I think they're inching towards saying, we got to go to war to fix this. When they did it in 2006, it didn't work too good. The Israelis had a lot of problems, and it was sort of a draw at the end of that battle.
Yeah, and so, Mark, let's talk about that. I mean, we've seen these 2 days of what appears to be clandestine operations, followed by these strikes today. What do you make of what Israel has done so far? And again, Israel hasn't said that they're behind those walkie-talkie and pager attacks, but all indications are that it probably is behind that. How do you see this operation?
So, look, those 2 days, the 48 hours of the attacks via the pagers and yesterday with the walkie-talkies, that's the most impressive kinetic intelligence operation I've ever seen. I think Israel is demonstrating to Hezbollah they have almost total dominance in the intelligence sphere. And it looks like what's happened today is in essence, phase 2. These are airstrikes in southern Lebanon. They're still restricted to southern Lebanon. And of course, you also have Israeli jets overflying Nasrallah as he's speaking. So this is almost kind of, an information operations war, a psychological war. And I think the Israelis are sending a signal to Nasrallah that you don't want a wider war. And I go back to, like I've spent a lot of time in the region. Israeli national security doctrine often is something akin to escalate to de-escalate. They're climbing the escalatory ladder, but they're doing it deliberately. They're giving Hezbollah a chance to stand down. But as General McCaffrey noted, the Israeli public has had it. There's 70,000 people who can't go back to their homes in the north. And so ultimately, I think this is part of the overall strategy.
And so, Mark, let's talk about that strategy, because why would they have decided to carry out these 2 days now, you think?
So, great question. There has been a lot of speculation that, of course, it may have been that the operation would be compromised, that they had to move this up. But I do think there is something to the notion that this was, giving Hezbollah a chance to come down before any all-out war breaks out. The Israelis do move deliberately. I've seen their decision-making processes. And so, in some sense, they sent a message that, every member of Hezbollah's head is on a swivel. they have achieved total domination over them in the intelligence sphere. There's nothing. Their communication infrastructure has been destroyed. And as the general noted, there's perhaps several thousand Hezbollah members incapacitated. So it makes some sense, both tactically and in some sense strategically. I think, though, ultimately when this operation was planned, which probably took several months ago, this was designed for kind of the day of an invasion. So, you know, look, policymakers have tools in their toolkit. They decided to use this now. It was almost the most ideal operational prep of the environment tool, but as we see, they're using it as they're climbing this escalatory ladder. At least that's what I think is happening as we see the events day to day.
So, Mark, I'm just thinking of, like, from Hezbollah's perspective. So they said no cell phones because they're going to be probably compromised. Let's use essentially analog technology, right, for both the pagers and the walkie-talkies. Now that's out of the question. How do they go forward? How do they communicate going forward?
Well, this is why this is so effective. There's memes all over the social media of, Hezbollah members, not really, but carrying carrier pigeons. But communications and is so integral to Hezbollah's day-to-day activities. And so, they will be incapacitated. They will go to things such as couriers. This is going to kind of really old school techniques, but really hand it to the Israelis, because remember, the Hezbollah was using cell phones. Then they were worried that the Israeli, signals intelligence apparatus could intercept it. They went to the pagers, and then the Israelis ran the supply chain operations. So they're pushing them into an area of tremendous discomfort. And I think it's been obviously has been very effective.
And Raf, so how does today's operation compare to previous strikes Israel has carried out in Lebanon?
Well, Jose, we've seen Israel carrying out strikes in southern Lebanon and other parts of the country since October 8th, when Hezbollah effectively joins the fight alongside Hamas. It began firing into northern Israel in the days after the October 7th terror attack. Israel has been focusing its fight in Gaza, but at this point, it's not clear militarily, really, how much more there is to be achieved. Israel claims that it has destroyed all of Hamas's organized units in Gaza, and so it is effectively fighting an insurgency, a guerrilla force that pops up, disappears again. And at this point, it isn't clear that keeping lots and lots of Israeli forces inside of Gaza is leading to much in the way of marginal gains. The defense minister seems confident enough to release some of those units, including the 98th Division, which the general mentioned, allowing it to go up to the northern border. The question is that a symbol? Is it designed to put pressure on Hezbollah? Or is the idea that those forces are there to fight? And remember, Jose, from Israel's perspective, the overall official war aim is to create the security conditions so that tens of thousands of Israeli civilians who have been displaced from their homes along the Lebanon border feel secure enough to return. Now, it may be that if there was a ceasefire and the shooting stopped, that many of them would go back, but many of those Israeli families have told us October 7th completely changed their perception of risk. Even if the shooting stops, they will not feel safe in their homes knowing that Hezbollah fighters are just a few hundred yards away on the other side of the border, and they are demanding that their government find a way to move Hezbollah away from that borderline. So that's either by force or through a diplomatic deal. The U.S. has been trying month after month to not only get a ceasefire in Gaza, but to try to get to some sort of agreement between Israel and Hezbollah. Neither of those diplomatic efforts seem to be bearing any fruit at the moment, and you are seeing Israeli forces at this point massing on their northern border. And the question is it now only a matter of time before there is all-out war between the two sides? Jose.
In general, looking at a crystal ball, at a military experience, the one that you have, what are we in right now, and what are you seeing the possibilities of what we could be reporting on tomorrow and in the next week?
Well, clearly, a war makes no sense to Israel, to Hezbollah, nor Iran. I think the X factor is going to be if we take the next step, we meaning the IDF, and Hezbollah starts using ballistic missiles against Israeli cities, Iron Dome and their air defenses will not be sufficient to protect Israeli life. At that point, the Israelis have to go in on the ground. not with commando forces and airstrikes, but by calling up several 100,000 reservists and trying to knock Hezbollah out of the fight. They will not be able to tolerate a continuing months-long rocket and ballistic missile attack on Israeli cities. So we're one step short of, 1914 and the start of a regional conflict of tremendous bitterness. I hope that doesn't happen.
Ralph Sanchez, General Barry McCaffrey, and Mark Polymeropoulos, thank you very much for being with us this morning. Up next, Vice President Harris hits a key battleground state today, and she's bringing along some major star power. And later, the Fed cuts interest rates by a half percentage point. So what's next for the economy? We're back in 90 seconds. You're watching Jose Díaz-Balart Reports on MSNBC.
Hey, Lexus, show alternate routes.
Technology that's ready for the road ahead. The Lexus NX.
Get special offers on select Lexus models.
You can grow your savings at 5.1% APY with our new high-yield cash account. There are no fees, period. You don't need a subscription either. And earn 5.1% APY with no strings attached. Public.com.
Now let's go to Minnesota's Democratic Governor Tim Walz.
These guys are just weird. Robber barons like J.D. Vance and Donald Trump gutted the Midwest.
Your first reaction to the choice of Tim Walz?
Democrats were deflated. Now, game is on.
I think this race is going to get even more interesting.
Morning Joe, weekdays from 6 to 10 on MSNBC.
$14 past the hour, just 47 days till the election. Today, Vice President Harris will head to battleground Michigan, where she's hoping for a boost from television icon Oprah Winfrey, who will appear alongside the vice president virtually. Former President Trump will meet with Jewish supporters in D.C. It comes after he held a rally last night in Long Island, New York, where he had this message for the Harris campaign.
Stop claiming your opponents will turn America into a dictatorship. Give me a break. Because the fact is that I'm not a threat to democracy, they are.
And while new polling shows this is still a deeply competitive race, Vice President Harris is gaining ground in key battleground states, Michigan and Pennsylvania. The race is locked in a dead heat in Wisconsin, where absentee ballots are going out to voters beginning today. Joining us now, NBC News correspondent Von Hilliard, Amy Parnes, senior political correspondent at The Hill, Tara Setmayer, a former GOP communications director on Capitol Hill and co-founder and CEO of the Seneca Project, and Adam Gentleson, a Democratic strategist and former chief of staff for Senator John Fetterman. So, Von, Trump hosted a rally in Long Island, New York, not exactly a toss-up state. What was that like? What was the mood?
Right, Jose was inside of an arena, and he used New York as a backdrop to call for the reinstatement of state and local tax deductions from one's federal tax.